Season 5, Episode 10, them after last week's surprise send-off of Tyreese to kick off the second half of Season 5, The Walking Dead finally got around to mourning on Sunday. Maggie Cohan mourned Beth. Sasha Sonequa Martin-Green mourned Tyreese and probably Bob, too. It was hard to sift the details amid her reckless behavior. Daryl Reedus mourned Beth as well, and things got dark when the slinger cauterized his feelings with a lit cigarette to the hand. This week's installment brought a surprising visitor, but not until the very end. After opening on a shot of the two pillars of the series, a lurching zombie and tears, the episode consisted mostly of misery and thudding symbolism, and was, frankly, pretty ponderous as a result. Like most of us, The Walking Dead is at its best when it gets out of its own head. Normally that means our heroes contending with some undead horde, or, more interestingly, the appearance of another group, who strive under some different ideology from the main character's loosely representative democracy, the governor's vintage strongman fascism, say, or the more nuanced consumer communism embraced by Team Terminus. But Sunday offered mostly open road, hunger and rumination. The team was broken roughly into one: the mourners and two others, urging them to process their feelings or have some water or otherwise just keep fighting. For his part, Glenn Stevenian, the group's glue guy, kept reminding everyone they'd only make it as long as they stuck together. Sorry, where were we? Oh, right. The opening tears belonged to Maggie, still torn up over the loss of her sister, the hope that had perched in her soul blasted to feather Reedus by Officer Dawn's gun. Elsewhere, Daryl ate worms and Sasha found a bunch of dead frogs, hints of both the tornado to come and the broad religiosity that shaded the entire episode. But she buried them quickly, lest someone suggest she eat those, too. The group is a wreck, was the point. Sun-baked and bedraggled, with no food or gas and little water, they headed for Washington on foot. How much longer we got? Maggie asked, and Sasha told her 60 miles. I wasn't talking about that, Maggie said. Loud and clear, Maggie. But you and I both know that you don't give up, that's not who you are, and here's Glenn, and Carol Melissa McBride and Rick Andrew Lincoln and probably at least one other person to remind us, over and over, in case anyone forgot. There was a slight regression to herd some trailing zombies off a bridge as if they were the world's least majestic buffalo. But even that turned into a therapy session, when Sasha became unglued, using the walkers as grizzly Bobo dolls a la Tyreese's post-Karen rampage in Season 4. McKinney had even warned Sasha against following her brother's example in this regard, but it didn't sink in. A bit later the survivors came upon some abandoned cars that offered nothing but booze, which Abraham Michael Kidlitz helped himself to in arguably his first sympathetic moment. Possibly projecting here. Drinking that stuff in our current desiccated state will only make it worse, someone said. I truly do not know if things can get worse, Eugene Josh McDermott said. Cue the pack of wild dogs, which made me laugh, whatever the intended response. Sasha dispatched them with the rifle, and soon the group's stomachs were sated, if not untroubled, by the menu. I don't know if I'm going to make it, Noah Tyler James Williams said, because it had been a while since anyone else said it. Don't think, just eat, Sasha said, which might have been easier had somebody kicked that bloody dog collar out of sight, maybe. Just a thought. The Doberman Crunch was but the first blessing of the day, as it turned out, because a healing downpour came in short order. And for a brief moment, the sorrows of post-apocalyptic life, not to mention the doubts of a weeping Father Gabriel Billiam who'd tossed his collar in the fire earlier, were washed away by the cleansing rain. Look, I support this show's heartier aspirations. I was on board with Tyreese's extended feud state last week, for example, and I also believe in the value of humanity. Some of my best friends are human. But The Walking Dead can get stuck talking endlessly about life and togetherness instead of showing us the sort of little human moments that make both seem worth preserving. I'm not asking for much, just people being people. Think Daryl and Carol arguing over a piece of modern art earlier this season instead of dreary metaphors for the will to live. What we got on Sunday was magical music boxes and weighty Rick explaining in the barn, where the group sought refuge from the worsening storm. His story, which came complete with a title drop, equated his grandfather's pretending he was dead in order to make it through World War II with the survivors doing what we need to do, and then we get to live. No matter what we find in DC, I know we'll be okay, Rick said. Because this is how we survive. We tell ourselves that we are the Walking Dead. I didn't quite get it and neither did Daryl. We ain't them, he said. The speech fell flat for me, at any rate, as did the later face-off at the barn door, the survivors coming together to hold the line against the forces of the undead. The scene was evocatively shot, sure, but too freighted with meaning to manage much suspense or emotional punch. For me, At least, others may disagree. As always, please fire away in the comments. The next morning Sasha and Maggie emerged to find that a fortuitous tornado temporarily ended the zombie threat. Then they made another improbable discovery, a man who looked as if he'd just stepped out of a minivan. What do you make of Aaron? He claimed to be a friend, both in person and on the note he left with the water he left for the group earlier, but he came across more as a creepy church camp director. I have good news, he said, which, when has that ever truly been the case with would-be saviors on this show? That said, if he gives the survivors something to focus on besides their own misery, it could be very good news for the rest of us. A few thoughts while we check the Gerber label. Sorry to bring this up, but do we think baby Judith ate dog, too? I enjoyed last week's episode. As I said, I thought it was cleverly shot and that Tyreese deserved a rich send-off. But some commenters found it pretentious or pointless for both possibly influential factors. I heard the 80 load was brutal last week. I watched the episode on a screener but can see how Tyrese's ghosty rap session would seem more tedious on the heels of a 5-minute commercial break.